Right after we got married, my husband blatantly traveled abroad with his mistress. I calmly texted him not to come back, and then made a decision that would leave him completely ruined. As the clock struck 11 at night, the shrill ring of the phone tore through the quiet atmosphere. I was sitting at the vanity, taking off my cumbersome pearl earrings. Glancing through the large mirror, I saw Kevin jolt. He grabbed his phone from the bed like lightning, as if terrified I would snatch it. Turning his back to me, he stepped quickly onto the balcony and lowered his voice to a whisper. But in the dead silence, I caught every single word. "I'm here." "What? Why are you crying? Calm down and tell me. You got robbed of all your IDs? Which police station are you at?" I stopped what I was doing and quietly watched my new husband's back. After a few minutes of whispering and coaxing with his fake, deep, comforting voice, Kevin stepped back into the room. He pretended to be frantic, running his hands through his hair, perfectly playing the role of a deeply concerned older brother. Kevin hastily opened the closet, pulled out a carry-on suitcase, and quickly stuffed in 3 dress shirts and 2 pairs of slacks. "Sarah, I have to fly to Cabo San Lucas tonight," he said in a serious tone. "My former college mentee, Chloe, she's like a little sister to me, went on vacation in Mexico and someone snatched her purse. Now she is stranded at a police station down there. She doesn't speak a word of Spanish. If I don't go, nobody will help her." I slowly stood up and crossed my arms over my chest. My eyes looked straight at him, strangely calm. There was no trace of panic, no resentment of a new bride abandoned on her wedding night. I picked up my phone, checked the flight schedules, and casually replied, "The earliest flight to Cabo doesn't take off until dawn. Are you planning to go to the airport and sit hugging your suitcase starting right now?" Kevin froze, his eyes shifting around to avoid mine. "Well, I will just go wait there, and if there is a cancellation, I'll hop on it. Please understand it's an emergency," she was sobbing uncontrollably. "We'll skip the wedding night for now. I will make it up to you when I get back. Make sure you lock the doors carefully." Saying that, the man zipped up his suitcase with a sharp sound and grabbed the handle. There was no hug, no goodbye kiss, and absolutely no regard for his new wife's feelings. He rushed down the stairs as if the sky would fall if he were a second late. I stepped out into the second-floor hallway, looking down at the living room, and called out slowly, articulating every word. "Kevin, drive safely. Make sure you take good care of your little sister down there." Kevin, who was putting on his shoes, just nodded and mumbled an agreement before opening the front door and heading out. The heavy door clicked shut, and the sound of his car fading down the street returned the 4-story Chicago townhouse to a dead silence. I walked back into the bedroom. Not a single tear fell. There was no screaming or smashing of furniture. At 28 years old, having built my career from scratch to sit in the regional director position of a major organic grocery chain, I had forged a mind of ice. The corporate world taught me that crying is only for the weak. How could this cheap little sister disguise fool me? I had actually known all about Kevin and Chloe's secret affair for 2 months. I knew perfectly well that the plane ticket to Cabo had been booked on his credit card a week ago. He cunningly planned to use our wedding night as the perfect shield, figuring that both our families would think no man would be crazy enough to commit adultery on the very night he brought his wife home. But he was wrong. The more arrogant he was, the deeper the trap he set for himself became. I walked leisurely down to the kitchen and brewed myself a hot cup of chamomile tea. Sipping the slightly bitter yet sweet tea, I kept my eye on the clock. I waited patiently for exactly 3.5 hours. That was the time I estimated Kevin would be seated on the red-eye flight to Mexico and forced to switch his phone to airplane mode. Picking up my phone, I typed a short, concise text message without any unnecessary punctuation. "You do not need to come back to this house ever again." I hit send, and the screen confirmed the message flew away. Later, when everything blew up, I found out exactly how Kevin reacted when he received that text. As soon as he landed at Los Cabos International Airport, he turned his phone on and read my words. He just smirked in contempt. He muttered a curse, assuming I was just like any other woman, throwing a petty tantrum and making empty threats. He was absolutely certain I was at home crying my eyes out into my pillow. He thought that in a few days, he just needed to bring back a designer handbag, and I would be as docile as a wet kitten. He shoved the phone into his pocket, didn't even bother to reply a single word, whistled a tune, and rolled his suitcase toward the exit where his mistress was desperately waiting. Kevin had no idea that the moment he stepped onto that flight, he had triggered a ticking time bomb. And my text message was the very first beep counting down to the total destruction of his life. The net was cast, and the prey had voluntarily walked into the trap. My only job now was to get a good night's sleep so I could start pulling in the catch tomorrow. The next morning I woke up at exactly 6 o'clock. Not tired, not sluggish. On the contrary, my mind was incredibly sharp and clear. I had been weaving this net relentlessly for a whole year, and now it was time to haul in the big fish. Many people might wonder, knowing how terrible and deceitful Kevin was, why did I still bite my tongue and go through with the wedding? The painful truth was that thousands of invitations had been sent out, and business partners from both sides were attending. Canceling the wedding at the last minute would be like slapping my parents in the face, directly affecting the reputation of the organic grocery chain I was sweating blood to run. Furthermore, I wanted Kevin to climb to the absolute peak of smug satisfaction, and then I would personally kick him down to the darkest abyss. The higher you climb, the harder you fall. If Kevin siphoned $1 from me, I would force him to vomit out 10. Over the past year, when we first started pooling our investments and discussing marriage, I vaguely noticed irregular loopholes in the accounting books of Kevin's appliance distribution company. I secretly investigated and copied all the documents. But it was not until 2 months ago that I found the final puzzle piece. He did not use that corporate fund to roll over capital as he claimed. Instead, he used it to buy designer goods and provide an allowance for his so-called little sister, Chloe. I grabbed my phone and dialed my lawyer, Michael. He was my college senior and the trusted legal counsel for my company. "Michael, we can begin," I said briefly as soon as he picked up. Michael's calm voice echoed over the clacking of his computer keyboard. "I reviewed the entire file you sent last night. The wire transfers from the corporate account to Chloe's personal account, the receipts for the handbags and watches, and the fake contracts Kevin signed with shell companies to embezzle funds. It is all crystal clear. He cannot run from this. Has Kevin boarded his flight? He landed at 4 in the morning. I am sure he is busy playing the good guy in Cabo right now," I replied, casually taking a sip of water. "That is brutal," Michael laughed out loud. "He kicked the wrong hornet's nest. What is your plan for the downtown Chicago condo? The buyers have been rushing me since yesterday afternoon. The luxury 3-bedroom condo in downtown Chicago was our biggest shared asset. Back then, Kevin sweetly coaxed me into putting down 70% of the cash, while he took out a mortgage for the rest. He swore that putting the deed solely in his name would make the loan process easier, and after the wedding, he would file the paperwork to make it joint property. He thought I was blindly in love and easy to manipulate. Outwardly, I nodded in agreement, but behind his back, I had prepared a trump card. "What time are the buyers coming to the notary office?" I asked. 9:30 this morning. The power of attorney documents are all valid. A real signature and a real notary seal are no joke. Rest assured." I smirked, my eyes turning cold. 3 months ago, I asked him to sign a stack of guarantee papers for supermarket supplies, deliberately slipping in a full power of attorney document over the property. He even got it notarized himself while frantically changing clothes to rush out for drinks with clients. A real signature and a real seal. The arrogant guy relied on his CEO title and blindly trusted his wife, so he didn't even bother to read what he was signing. Because it is being sold at 15% below market value, the buyers locked it in very fast. They agreed to pay in full, and the money will be wired directly into your account this morning. I will handle the legal paperwork. You just focus on cleaning house. Hanging up, I started my second task of the day, taking out the trash. I opened my contacts and called my usual full-service moving company. At exactly 8 in the morning, a small moving truck pulled up in front of my Lincoln Park townhouse. 4 muscular young men walked in carrying cardboard boxes. "Sarah, where are we moving the stuff today? Do you need us to wrap it carefully?" The crew leader took off his cap, wiping a drop of sweat from his forehead. Professional habit made him look around the living room. "Go straight up to the 3rd floor," I pointed upstairs, giving a clear command. "In the right side closet, take all the men's suits, dress shirts, slacks, leather shoes, watches, cologne. Basically, any men's items or Kevin's personal belongings, pack them all into boxes for me." "Yes, ma'am. What about electronics like computers and iPads? Should we use shrink wrap or bubble wrap?" "Don't wrap anything at all." I dismissed the idea. "Just throw it all in the boxes. If it's fragile, let it break. Once you are done, drive it straight to the county landfill. On top of the contract fee, I will give each of you a $50 tip for drinks." The young men looked at each other in bewilderment, thinking they had misheard. But hearing about the bonus, their faces lit up immediately. They said yes loudly, grabbed the boxes, and stomped upstairs. I stood in the living room with my arms crossed, listening to the sound of things being thrown violently into cardboard boxes, feeling incredibly light. The designer suits he styled himself in to flirt with women, the expensive colognes I took the time to buy for his birthday, the polished leather shoes he wore to strut to his mistress's place. All of it was now nothing more than garbage. Shortly after, 3 bulging cardboard boxes were carried down to the truck. In less than an hour, every trace of Kevin in this house was wiped clean. The 4-story townhouse returned to its original state, belonging exclusively to me. I leisurely walked upstairs, carefully checking every drawer to see if anything was left. Suddenly, my eyes stopped at the bottom drawer of the desk. A folder containing bank statements for a joint savings account was rolling around under some draft documents. I frowned, picked it up, and opened it. It was a savings account under Kevin's parents' names, worth $80,000. I had heard they planned to use this money for their retirement and to renovate their house in Peoria. Yet the other day, I heard whispers from his relatives that Kevin had the nerve to secretly take out a second mortgage on his parents' house. Where did he get the $60,000 to plug the financial hole he created? He just threw these empty bank statements here to blindside his parents. Very well, Kevin, I muttered coldly, putting the folder into my purse. Your parents enabled you, so today I will let you destroy this family with your own hands. At exactly 10 o'clock, my phone pinged. A text message from the bank notified me that my account balance had increased by $200,000 from the sale of the downtown condo. The transaction went through flawlessly. As for the shared credit cards and joint accounts under Kevin's name, I had frozen all of them last night, reporting them as lost and flagging them for suspicious fraudulent activity. Kevin in Cabo right now was nothing more than a beggar in a suit. By 10:30, the locksmith I called early in the morning had completely replaced the front door lock with a high-end smart lock. The old passcode was deleted, and the backup physical keys were disabled. I stepped out onto the porch, stretching and taking a deep breath of the crisp, chilly early winter air. The wind blew through my shoulder-length hair, bringing an ultimate sense of freedom. Suddenly, the phone screen in my hand lit up and vibrated violently. The words mother-in-law sat imposingly on the screen. She was calling this early, probably to ask how our wedding night went and why we hadn't driven over to her house for breakfast. The corner of my mouth lifted into a faint smile. The real war was just beginning. The shrill ringtone shattered the quiet space. The words mother-in-law flashed continuously. I swiped to answer and put the phone to my ear, my tone as bland as plain water. Hello, I am listening. Ah, the new bride. It's almost 11 in the morning and you two still haven't bothered to come over for a family breakfast? Still sleeping lazily over there? Where is Kevin? Tell him to get on the phone. Eleanor's voice boomed through the speaker, carrying her usual irritable, condescending attitude. I calmly took a sip of black coffee. Kevin is not home. He flew to Mexico last night, Eleanor. If you have time, tell Emma to drive you over to my house. I have something very important to discuss. Something regarding the survival of your house in Peoria. The other end of the line went dead silent for about 3 seconds. Then Eleanor panicked. What are you talking about? What house deed, you brat? You wait right there, I am coming over. 30 minutes later, the sound of a car braking sharply echoed in front of the gate. I unlocked the smart lock. Eleanor stormed in angrily, followed by Emma, Kevin's 25-year-old sister, whose face was still bewildered, not understanding what was going on. Eleanor rolled her eyes around the living room, sniffing out the abnormality. The house was so neat it felt empty. There were no men's shoes on the rack, no trace of men's belongings. Where is Kevin? Did he go on an unexpected business trip? You just got married and you let your husband go off alone like that? And what is this about the house deed? Eleanor immediately launched an attack, plopping down on the sofa. I poured 3 cups of hot tea and pushed them toward my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Leisurely, I sat down on the chair opposite them, interlaced my fingers, and rested them on the glass table. Kevin did not go on a business trip. He abandoned his wife on his wedding night to fly to Cabo to save his so-called little sister, Chloe. Please drink some tea to soothe your throat, Eleanor. Eleanor's face lost its color. The hand she had reached out to grab the teacup slightly retracted, but she still tried to salvage the situation, stuttering. You do not make crazy, jealous accusations. Kevin is a decent man. Chloe is just a family friend. She is stranded in a foreign country, so he is helping her. As a wife, you need to know your place. Know my place? I laughed out loud, a faint laugh, but enough to make the atmosphere in the room sink. I reached for the blue folder I had placed on the shelf and tossed it onto the table with a slap. You don't need to act anymore. Do you think I am blind? The diamond tennis bracelet you are wearing on your wrist, the expensive La Mer skincare set you showed off to the whole neighborhood last month, and that 2-day weekend getaway to the luxury spa in September. Where do you think that money came from? From the pocket of Chloe, the side piece sucking up to her future mother-in-law, right? Eleanor flinched, hastily hiding her hand with the diamond bracelet behind her back, her face drained of every drop of blood. But what you do not know, I tapped my fingers on the table, emphasizing every word, is that the money was embezzled from the company by your son, using his wife's money to play sugar daddy to his mistress. And then the mistress used that money to buy bribes for her mother-in-law so you would cover up their affair. Do you think this is a good script? Sarah, is this true, Mom? Emma, who had been sitting quietly next to her all this time, now shakily grabbed Eleanor's arm. Kevin was cheating and you knew about that homewrecker? You played along to hide it from Sarah? Shut up! Eleanor yelled at her daughter, then turned to glare at me, trying to save her pride. Well, men messing around a little is normal. Once he gets bored, he will come back to his wife. Are you making up wild jealousies to turn this house upside down? I shook my head slightly, my cold eyes piercing into the bitter woman in front of me. I am not turning anything upside down. The one making a mess is your son. Keep defending him and let's see if you still can when you see this. I pulled a photocopy of the property deed and a second mortgage loan contract out of my bag and placed them neatly in front of Eleanor. Yesterday, while cleaning, I found the savings statements at the bottom of the drawer, but that was just a camouflage. The truth lay in the stack of papers hidden safely in the company safe that I had someone pry open early this morning. Kevin secretly siphoned company funds, bankrupting the accounts to support Chloe. Running out of money, he sneaked back to Peoria, forged his parents' signatures, and took out a $60,000 high-interest hard money loan against their house to cover his massive financial hole. His signature was right there in plain sight. Next week is the deadline to pay the first interest installment. Without money to pay the bank, they will come down, foreclose the property, and evict his parents. Eleanor tremblingly picked up the paper. The words real estate mortgage contract and the figure of $60,000 hit her eyes, making her stagger. Her elbow knocked the teacup on the table, sending it crashing to the floor, shattering into pieces, spilling hot tea everywhere. No, it cannot be. Kevin couldn't do this to me. Eleanor screamed, clutching her chest and gasping for air, tears beginning to stream down her wrinkled face. Oh my God, what an unfilial son. He killed us. Mom, calm down. Emma burst into tears, hugging her mother's shoulders. She looked up at me with red eyes, her voice breaking. Sarah, please save my parents. My dad is sick at home. If the house is foreclosed, he won't survive, Sarah. Why is Kevin such a scumbag? I was not moved by my mother-in-law's crocodile tears, but regarding Emma, I knew the girl was reasonable and understood right from wrong. I pulled out 2 pre-drafted documents and placed them on the dry side of the glass table. I am a business person. Everything must be clear. I looked straight at Eleanor, who was sobbing. Now I am giving you 2 choices. I pointed to the first document. 1. You continue to stay silent and defend your precious son. You take this $60,000 debt home and handle it yourself. Whether you end up living out of a car or wherever is your family's business, I will not interfere. I will file the divorce papers straight to the court. Then I pointed to the second document, a sworn witness statement. 2. You sign this statement. You testify in court that Kevin committed adultery with Chloe, abandoned his wife on their wedding night, dispersed assets, and deceived his family. If you just sign it, I will use my personal money to go to the bank, pay off the $60,000 debt, and clear the mortgage for your parents. Eleanor stared at the 2 documents as if looking at a death sentence. Her whole life, she lived for pride, always puffing out her chest, bragging about her CEO son in the big city. Now, she had to expose her own family's ugly truth, admitting to the law that her son was a scumbag, just to buy peace for her old age. Sarah, are you backing me into a corner like this? Eleanor looked up, her eyes full of spite mixed with pleading. It was Kevin and you who backed yourselves into a corner, I replied coldly, not yielding an inch. When you accepted gifts from your son's mistress and helped him betray me, did you think about my corner? Answer me. Which one do you choose? Sign it, Mom. Emma suddenly spoke up, her voice surprisingly decisive. She picked up the pen on the table and pressed it into Eleanor's hand. Emma's tears were flowing, but her gaze was incredibly firm. Kevin has gone too far. Sarah did nothing wrong. Are you going to choose fake pride or Dad's life? Sign it, Mom. Under the pressure of the massive debt notice and the sharp words of her own biological daughter, Eleanor's last line of defense collapsed completely. Trembling, she held the pen, her messy signature imprinting on the witness statement, accompanied by a loud wail full of bitterness and humiliation. I carefully took the paper back, folded it neatly, and slipped it into the folder. Looking at the broken woman in front of me, I felt absolutely no pity in my heart. Immediate karma. Whatever does not belong to you, if you greedily try to patch it together, it will ultimately shatter into pieces anyway. Emma, take your mother home to rest. As for the debt, I will have someone handle it this afternoon. I stood up, coldly seeing the guests out. Watching the silhouettes of Eleanor and Emma supporting each other, stumbling out the door, I locked the gate and smiled in relief. The ticking time bomb in the rear had been neatly defused. Now, the net was pulled tight. Let's see how the deceitful husband's pathetic play in Mexico comes to a miserable end. Men, when they have money and a mistress by their side, often puff out their chests thinking they are the kings of the world. But they forget that the golden throne they sit on is sometimes forged by the endurance of the wife at home. That morning, exactly at 10 o'clock stateside, I was sitting relaxed in my office at the Whole Earth Foods regional headquarters, a cup of black iced coffee in hand. In front of me was the computer screen, with financial management and tracking software already open. I knew that right now in Cabo, the best act of the play was truly beginning. Later, through police testimonies and recorded phone calls, I was able to fully picture the pathetic state of my ex-husband. That morning, at Luxury Avenue, the most bustling high-end mall in Cabo, Kevin was still swimming in the illusion of a successful man. He locked arms with Chloe, the little sister, wearing a mask of innocence. Chloe whined, pulling Kevin into the Chanel boutique, pointing at a limited edition black handbag. "Kevin, I was robbed of everything. This bag is so pretty, buy it to make up for it. I am so tired walking around pregnant, I just want a little joy," Chloe pleaded, her voice sweet as sugar. Kevin, with an ego the size of a mountain, lifted his chin to signal the staff to wrap it up. The bag had a price tag of about $3,500. Not a small number, but realistic enough for a lavish vacation of a fake CEO. Kevin casually pulled out his platinum credit card and tossed it on the counter. The cashier swiped the card. A short beep rang out. The Mexican salesgirl looked at the screen, smiled awkwardly. "I am sorry, sir, your card was declined." Kevin frowned, his half-smile dying out. He snatched the card back, grumbling. "Must be an international network error. Swipe this secondary Visa card." He pulled out another corporate card. Another cold beep. "I am very sorry, sir. This card is showing as locked." Kevin's face began to lose color. A few foreign tourists around them started to turn and look. Chloe stood next to him, pouting and stomping her foot. "What is wrong? Are all your cards broken? Call your bank. Standing here is so embarrassing." Kevin was sweating bullets. He hastily pulled Chloe out of the store, pulled out his phone, and dialed his bank's customer service back in the US. As soon as he heard the agent's report, his legs turned to jelly. "Your accounts were frozen early this morning, at the request of the joint account holder, Sarah, due to suspected fraudulent transactions. The corporate credit cards have also been temporarily locked pending review by the board of directors." Kevin roared right in the middle of the mall lobby. "What? What right does Sarah have to lock my cards? I am the CEO. Unlock them immediately." But the other end of the line only responded with cold legal regulations. Kevin hung up the phone, raging like a mad beast, backed into a corner. He scrolled through his contacts and dialed my number on a video call. I answered on the second ring. His polished image appeared on the screen, his face bright red, veins popping on his neck in pure fury. "Sarah, what the hell are you doing with my accounts? Are you crazy? Unlock the cards immediately," Kevin screamed, not bothering to keep up appearances. I smiled, leisurely stirring my coffee. "Good morning, Kevin. Enjoying the trip to save your sister? The Mexican food must suit your taste. Your voice is so strong." "Don't beat around the bush," Kevin gritted his teeth. "You are relying on the joint paperwork to arbitrarily freeze my money, right? You better be smart and call the bank to fix this right now. I am stuck in Cabo without a dime. Are you trying to starve me to death over here?" "Oh my, you are a CEO. Why worry about not having money?" I laughed clearly. "I locked the joint credit cards. The money I make, I do not have the free time to bankroll my husband and my husband's mistress. Oh, by the way, the 5-star resort you booked with my card, I just canceled the reservation and got a refund too. Before noon today, you two better pack your bags and get out on the street. Sarah, you dare?" Kevin was speechless, his eyes glaring at me through the screen. Not only do I dare, but I did much more than that. I dropped my smile, my face turning stony, my voice as cold as ice. "Did you think I was at home crying and waiting for you to hand out pity? You are dead wrong. You packed your bags to go with a homewrecker, so don't blame me for pulling up the weeds by the roots." Before Kevin could digest the shock, another call interrupted his phone. Kevin hastily answered. It was from his company's chief accountant. I left the call on hold, leisurely listening to his conversation. "Hello. What is going on that you are calling nonstop?" Kevin snapped. "Kevin, come back immediately. We are dead." The accountant's voice rang out, crying in utter panic. "The police just raided the office and read a warrant sealing all the books. They brought a whistleblower file accusing you of creating fake contracts to embezzle $120,000. And at the Cicero warehouse, Chad, Chloe's brother, was directing trucks to smuggle inventory out for a fire sale when the police swooped in and caught him red-handed. He was handcuffed and taken away, Kevin. You need to turn yourself in." Kevin stood frozen on Mexican soil. The sky in the foreign land felt like it was crashing down on his head. Kevin switched back to the video call with me. His eyes turned from angry to absolute panic. His teeth chattered together. Sarah, you set me up. You did all of this. I tapped my fingers on the desk, looking at his pathetic state and feeling incredibly relieved. I didn't set you up, Kevin. I just made public the garbage you took so much effort to hide over the past year. You siphoned $120,000 from the company. You pushed your mistress's brother to liquidate goods. You forged your parents' signatures to take out a second mortgage at the bank. All of those have your signature. I just helped you hand them over to the law. Sarah, you can't be this cruel, Kevin screamed, begging. His arrogance completely vanished. Leave me a way out. Unlock the card so I can buy a ticket home. And then as husband and wife we will close the door and talk. There is no husband and wife here, Kevin. I decisively cut him off. Take off your designer clothes and sell them. Use the cash to buy an economy ticket home. Make sure you get back soon. The police summons is posted on your office door. Goodbye. I hung up and blocked his number without hesitation. On the other side of the battle line, Kevin collapsed, slumping onto the granite steps of the mall. Chloe, seeing his state, panicked and shook him. Kevin, where is the money? Buy the bag for me. What did that woman say about the police arresting Chad? Tell me. Kevin looked up at the mistress he once placed on a pedestal. Crazy anger surged. He swung his hand and slapped Chloe squarely in the face, a devastating blow. To hell with your handbag. Because of you and your brother, I lost everything. Everything. Kevin roared like a mad dog, ignoring the judging stares of hundreds of passers-by. No money, no cards, no CEO title. The two people who once thought they were the smartest in the world were now left stranded on the streets of Cabo, officially tasting the absolute rock bottom of humiliation and despair. On the afternoon of the fourth day since that ridiculous wedding night, I was sitting in the supermarket office reviewing the weekly revenue when the security camera app integrated into my phone alerted me to movement at the front door. I leisurely took a sip of black tea and tapped to full screen. The humiliating play of Kevin, after dragging his body back from Mexico, was fully captured in my sight. On the screen, Kevin and Chloe had just stepped out of a beat-up Uber. I guessed he must have sold his fake luxury watch or stripped his mistress's jewelry to exchange for 2 economy airline tickets back to the US. Kevin looked so haggard I almost didn't recognize him. His designer dress shirt was wrinkled and drenched in sweat, his hair a mess. Chloe walked beside him carrying a deflated purse, her face scowling and sullen, not bothering to say a word to him. The pink romance built on stolen money seemed to have completely evaporated when the credit cards declined. Kevin struggled to drag the suitcase to the front door of the Chicago townhouse. He reached out a trembling hand and placed his index finger on the smart lock. Beep, beep, beep. A cold red light flashed. Invalid fingerprint. Kevin frowned, cursed, and punched in the numeric passcode. Beep, beep, beep. Another red error light. Damn it! Is this stupid door broken? Kevin roared, raising his hand to pound violently on the solid door. Sarah, open the door. Sarah, are you home? Chloe stood behind him, hands on her hips, her voice shrill and full of frustration. You said you bought this house, you had the keys. How come we get to the door and have to stand here like beggars? Did you lie to me? Shut up! Kevin turned and yelled right in her face. That crazy woman probably just played a trick and changed the passcode. Wait for me to call a locksmith to bust this door down. Just then, Mrs. Higgins, the HOA president and next-door neighbor, a sharp woman in her 60s who knew everything that happened on the block, pushed her gate and stepped out. Mrs. Higgins held a broom, squinting at Kevin through her reading glasses. Well, if it isn't Kevin. Keep pounding like that and you'll ruin Sarah's door. She went to stay with her parents for a few days. There is nobody home. Kevin gripped the iron bars tightly, forcing a stiff smile. Mrs. Higgins, do you have the number for a locksmith? Please give it to me. My wife and I had an argument. She got mad and changed the locks without telling me. Mrs. Higgins leaned on her broom, looking from Kevin to the girl Chloe twisting behind him with a gaze of utter contempt. Mad about what? Mrs. Higgins's voice boomed loud enough for several neighbors to open their doors and peek out. This house is on the land Sarah's parents bought her before the wedding. The deed is in her name. If she wants to change the locks, she changes them. Why would she ask for your opinion? And you are a piece of work. You dumped your wife on your wedding night to chase a girl, and now you have the nerve to bring this tramp back here and demand to break the door? Kevin's face drained of every drop of blood. He stammered. Mrs. Higgins, what nonsense are you talking about? I went on a business trip abroad. Business trip my foot. Mrs. Higgins spat. This whole block knows your true colors. Since yesterday morning, Sarah called a truck to clear everything out. All your clothes, shoes, and cologne were thrown into the dumpsters at the end of the street. By now, the garbage trucks probably hauled them straight to the county landfill, kid. There's not even a pair of your underwear left in that house, and you demand to go in? Kevin stood frozen, his arms dropping to his sides. Chloe, hearing this, rolled her eyes, lunged forward, grabbed Kevin's shirt, and screamed shrilly. What? You said you bought this house. My clothes and bags are in there too. What do you mean they are at the dump? Give me my stuff back. Give me my money back, you bastard. Shut your mouth! Kevin violently shoved Chloe, sending her crashing to the ground. The crushing humiliation of being exposed by a neighbor and cursed out by his mistress drove him insane. But before Kevin could gather his senses, the phone in his pocket vibrated violently. He answered. The other end of the line was Michael, my lawyer, who was currently at his company headquarters. I sat in my office, opening a parallel screen to listen to the call in its entirety. Kevin, you landed, right? Michael's voice was calm and distinct. Michael, tell Sarah to open the door for me right now. Is she trying to revolt? Kevin yelled into the phone, completely losing his reason. That house belongs legally to Sarah. It has nothing to do with you, Michael replied coldly. You don't need to worry about the house door anymore. Grab a cab and head straight to the company headquarters. The board of directors and the authorities are waiting for you. Chad, Chloe's brother, confessed everything about how you directed the liquidation of assets. If you run, an arrest warrant will be issued this afternoon. Kevin staggered. The phone slipped from his hand, the screen shattering on the asphalt. He didn't bother to pick it up, nor did he pay any attention to his mistress sitting on the ground crying and throwing a fit. He bolted toward the end of the street, frantically waving down a beat-up cab to head to the company. Half an hour later, Kevin arrived at the lobby of the office building. This place used to be his territory, where he strutted in his shiny suits while employees bowed in greeting. But today, the first thing that hit his eyes was the yellow police tape across the CEO's office door, stamped with an FBI seal. The building's security guard saw Kevin. His eyes no longer held any respect, only coldness mixed with slight contempt. Kevin, the chairman of the board, ordered that you are not allowed in the office area. You were dismissed yesterday morning. The young guard blocked his path. Get out of my way. I am the CEO. Do you know who I am? Kevin strained his neck, shouting and aggressively pushing the guard. But before he could step toward the elevator, 3 uniformed police officers stepped out of the conference room. The one leading coldly pulled a document from his briefcase. Kevin, we are from the Financial Crimes Unit. This is a summons requiring you to accompany us to the precinct to clarify charges of embezzlement, corporate fraud, and directing the illegal liquidation of sealed goods. There was no click of handcuffs. But the weight of that summons was like a 1,000-pound boulder crushing the last bit of life out of Kevin. His knees went soft. His glassy eyes stared at the words on the paper, then at the door of the office that used to be his. Employees peeked from behind the glass partitions, whispering and pointing. The person who exposed him was none other than the wife he callously abandoned on their wedding night. Kevin slowly sank down, his knees hitting the cold granite floor of the company lobby. He buried his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking violently, but he could not cry out loud. He realized he had truly lost everything. No family, no assets, no career. And the only thing waiting for him ahead was the cold sentences of the law. A brutal but entirely deserved punishment for a man with a treacherous heart. Exactly 3 days after the afternoon Kevin collapsed in the company lobby, I saw him again. This time, it was not in a luxurious place, but in a cold interrogation room, smelling of stale cigarette smoke and old paperwork at the police precinct. The heavy metal door opened, and a police officer escorted Kevin in. Seeing him, I almost laughed at his absolute misery. Less than a week ago, he was a CEO in a sharp suit with slicked-back hair, aggressively packing his bags to go save a beauty on his wedding night. Now, Kevin wore a wrinkled uniform, his beard growing out in patches, covering half of his haggard, pale face. His dark, sunken eyes were bloodshot, the eyes of a man who had stayed awake for nights in pure panic. Kevin sat down on the wooden chair opposite me and my lawyer, Michael. He clasped his hands tightly together, placing them on the table, trembling uncontrollably. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with resentful hatred but also harboring absolute terror. The detective pushed a thick stack of files toward Kevin, tapping his pen on the table. Kevin, we have cross-checked all the documents submitted by the company accountant and the shareholder representatives. From your orders to create 6 fake consulting contracts with shell companies, to embezzling over $120,000 from investment funds to transfer to Chloe's personal account. Plus the confession of Chad, Chloe's brother, regarding your phone call from Mexico directing the liquidation of inventory to cover your tracks. The evidence is clear. Do you have anything to say to defend your actions? Kevin was silent. He kept his face down, staring at the bank statements bearing his own fresh signatures. His chapped lips were pressed so tight they almost bled. He knew he was backed into a corner with no loopholes left to deny anything. But the nature of a man used to blaming others flared up. He suddenly snapped his head up, aiming his bloodshot eyes at me, his voice hoarse and bitter. "Sarah, are you this ruthless? Putting your own husband in jail and trampling my career? What do you gain from it? You feel so satisfied, don't you? Because of a little petty female jealousy, you destroyed everything." I slowly leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. I was not angry, nor did I bother to raise my voice. I looked at him with the sharp eyes of someone standing high above looking down at a mud puddle. "You are mistaken, Kevin. The one putting you in jail is not me, but your own greed and cowardice. When you siphoned every penny of the company's blood and sweat to buy designer bags for your mistress, did you think about loyalty? When you sneaked back to Peoria to secretly mortgage your own parents' house at the bank, taking $60,000 to plug your financial hole, did you think about loyalty? I am just the person cleaning up the exact trash you littered. Do not play the victim here. It is nauseating." Kevin exhaled, his chest heaving violently. He dug his 10 fingers into the edge of the table, desperately trying to salvage his last bit of pride by pulling out his only remaining weapon. "Fine, I admit I wronged the company. I lost to you in business. You are a woman who is too cruel and calculating. But do you know why I chose Chloe over you? Because Chloe is sweet and fragile. She needs my protection. Chloe doesn't make me feel suffocated and inferior like you do. At least now that I am empty-handed, Chloe is still by my side. She is carrying my flesh and blood in her womb. We will start over. That is something a vicious woman like you will never understand." Hearing this, Michael, sitting next to me, couldn't help but laugh out loud. The sound of laughter in the dead silence of the interrogation room sounded incredibly sarcastic. Michael opened his briefcase, pulled out a thin file, and leisurely pushed it toward Kevin. "Kevin, the stupidest thing in this world is believing in cheap love built on stolen money." Michael clicked his tongue, his tone mocking to the core. "Did you think your sweet little sister was that noble? The morning you were escorted from the company to the station, your Chloe was already waiting at your apartment. She quickly called someone to liquidate all the designer goods you bought her, pried open your safe, scooped up the last remaining thousands of dollars you kept for emergencies, and stole your Hublot watch too. She changed her phone number, caught a bus, and vanished to Las Vegas, man." Kevin's eyes widened, his whole body going stiff as if electrocuted. He shot up, knocking the wooden chair crashing to the floor. "You are lying. You guys are teaming up to trick me. Chloe would never do that. She is carrying my son. She swore she would wait for me to get out of jail. Talking about the pregnancy?" I coldly cut him off, personally pulling a piece of paper from the file and throwing it straight onto the table, sliding it right to his fingertips. "Kevin, you should read this yourself. With a CEO's education, it shouldn't be hard to read a basic NIPT and DNA paternity test." Trembling, Kevin reached out and picked up the paper. It was a copy of the non-invasive prenatal testing results that Chloe had taken a picture of to show off to him 2 months ago to demand a diamond ring. This piece of paper was obtained directly from the clinic by the private investigator I hired. "Kevin," I enunciated every word, the sound ringing in the closed room, sharp as a razor cutting into flesh. "You have type O blood. Chloe has type A blood. According to the most basic genetic principles, a child between you two can only have type A or type O blood. But open your eyes wide and look at the conclusion. The baby in Chloe's womb has type B blood." Kevin's face lost all color, turning as pale as a corpse. His lips trembled violently. His eyes darted frantically from the paper to me, then back to the paper, muttering like a sleepwalker. "No, it cannot be. It must be a mistake. The hospital messed up the test, or you forged documents to ruin me. Nobody has the free time to forge this kind of mess, Kevin." I gave a smile of ultimate pity reserved for the lowest of the low. The man with type B blood, and the actual father of that baby, is Tyler, the fitness trainer at the gym downtown. The exact same place where you steadily swiped 20 grand a year for a VIP membership so Chloe could keep in shape. You abandoned your wife on your wedding night, destroyed your company, liquidated assets, and pushed your mistress's brother into jail, ultimately just to take out the trash and be the fall guy for another man. Kevin, oh Kevin, you call me ruthless, but look, your own stupidity and delusion are the most ruthless things strangling you. A dead silence enveloped the room, leaving only the breathless, choking gasps of the man who was once so arrogant. The crushing humiliation flooded in like a flash flood, suffocating Kevin's chest. The brutal truth completely shattered his last illusion. He slowly sank to his knees, clutching his head with both hands, digging his fingers into his hair until they bled. The test result fluttered to the floor, cold as an unappealable final verdict. There was no furious screaming, only agonizing sobs stuck in the throat of a man who had been stripped clean of everything: his money, his pride, and his blind faith. He had lost it all, completely empty-handed, becoming the cheapest joke in the world. I stood up and adjusted my blazer, not bothering to cast another glance at the mud puddle groveling pitifully at my feet for even a second. "Michael, I will leave the procedures here to you to work out with the detectives." "Excuse me, I have to head out early. The supermarket has a supply shipment inspection this afternoon." I nodded to the police officer, pushed the door open, and walked out. The precinct hallway was flooded with the golden sunlight of an early winter noon. I held my head high, taking a deep breath. The air today was incredibly crisp and pleasant. The most pathetic act of the treacherous husband had officially come to an end, and every sin had to be paid for with the highest price. A week passed since the day Kevin completely collapsed in front of the DNA results in the interrogation room. For 7 long days, I did not show up once. I let him gnaw on his crushing humiliation, the brutal betrayal of his mistress, and the sheer terror facing the cold prison walls. My lawyer, Michael, reported that Kevin had deteriorated to the point of near madness. He refused to eat or sleep, and whenever he opened his mouth, he mumbled curses at Chloe and the gym trainer. But the law has no room for psychological pity. The charge of corporate fraud involving over $120,000 hung over Kevin's head like an executioner's blade ready to strike his life. On Monday morning, the Chicago air was freezing. Wearing a long wool coat, I returned to the police precinct with Michael to execute the final move on this chessboard. Kevin was escorted to the meeting room. It had only been a week, but he looked like he had aged 10 years. His once styled hair was now greasy, messy, and limp. His shoulders slouched, and he dragged his feet like a soulless ghost. When he saw me, a faint, desperate ray of hope flashed in Kevin's eyes. He rushed forward, throwing his hands across the table, his voice hoarse and pleading. Sarah, please save me. Please ask the authorities to let me out on bail. I cannot survive in here. I have nightmares every night. I was wrong. I was 1,000 times wrong. Please, for the sake of our years together as husband and wife." "Husband and wife?" I smirked, coldly cutting him off, my eyes not wavering a single beat. "That relationship died the exact moment you grabbed your suitcase and walked out the door to fly to Cabo on our wedding night, Kevin. Why didn't you think about our relationship then?" I glanced over at Michael. Catching the signal, Michael cleared his throat, opened his black leather briefcase, and pulled out a stack of documents, placing them neatly on the table. "Kevin, let's talk legal terms to make this quick." Michael spoke in a steady, professional, and clear tone. "Your act of embezzling over $120,000 from the company funds fully constitutes a severe federal felony. The penalty framework for this level ranges from 12 to 20 years in federal prison. Chad confessed everything about your orders. Added to the shareholder lawsuits, if this goes to trial, you are guaranteed a maximum sentence." Kevin shuddered, his face devoid of any blood. He stammered, tears welling up. "Michael, you are a great lawyer. You must have a way to help me." "Sarah, tell Michael to withdraw the lawsuit. You own shares in that company too. You can't push me to a dead end." "Yes, I own shares in that company." I tapped my index finger lightly on the table. A dry sound echoed. "And as the largest shareholder, I currently have the right to decide whether or not to file a waiver to downgrade this case into a civil business dispute. If I sign a waiver and commit to covering the damages for the board of directors, you will escape wearing an orange jumpsuit." Kevin's eyes lit up like a drowning man catching a life preserver. He reached out to grab my hand, but I pulled it back decisively, utterly disgusted. But I gritted my teeth, my eyes sharp as knives stabbing straight into his cowardice. There are no free lunches in this world. In exchange for the waiver that saves you from 20 years in prison, you must sign these 2 things immediately. I pulled 2 pre-drafted documents from my folder and pushed them right in front of Kevin. First, an uncontested divorce petition. Second, a marital settlement agreement. The contents are very clear. You voluntarily walk away empty-handed. The Chicago townhouse is my personal property gifted by my parents before the marriage. The downtown condo was sold to cover the damages caused by your embezzlement. Your shares in the company will be transferred entirely to me for $0 to offset the money you stole. And most importantly, you are solely responsible for your personal outside debts. They have nothing to do with me." Kevin stared at the 2 documents as if looking at a death warrant. His lips trembled violently, his face contorting. "Sarah, you are stripping me bare without leaving a single cent? How will I survive out there? I will be carrying a massive debt, losing the company, losing my wife, losing everything. You are forcing me into a corner like this. You might as well let me die in prison. Then go ahead and sit in prison." I nonchalantly reached out to pull the papers back. "I am giving you exactly 30 seconds to decide. Sign and go out there to rebuild your life empty-handed. Or or don't sign, and I will let the law throw you in a cell for 2 decades. Wait! Kevin frantically slammed his hand on the papers to keep them. He knew he had no right to bargain. The last bit of arrogance of a worldly CEO was crushed to ashes. Kevin's trembling hand slowly took the pen Michael offered. His tears fell heavily, blurring the ink on the edge of the divorce petition. Clenching his jaw, he quickly signed his name on every page. The signature was sloppy and distorted, just like his pathetic life right now. Done. Kevin dropped the pen, buried his face in the table, and sobbed like a child. I carefully collected the 2 documents, thoroughly checked the signatures and initials, and tucked them neatly into my briefcase. Without a single look of pity, without a single extra word of comfort, I stood up. My responsibility to this man officially ended forever the moment he put his pen to paper. Early that afternoon, I arrived at the neurology department at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. After the day I went to her house and threw the mortgage contract in front of her, Eleanor, my mother-in-law, suffered a sudden spike in blood pressure leading to a mild stroke. Luckily, she received emergency care in time, so she was not fully paralyzed. But the aftermath left her bedridden, unable to move her right side, and her speech was slurred and incoherent. The Miller family, who used to hold their heads high with pride in the neighborhood, was now shattered and disgraced. I pushed the hospital room door open. The air was stuffy, carrying the scent of antiseptic and the distinct musty smell of a hospital. Emma was sitting there, feeding her mother spoonfuls of thin oatmeal. Seeing me, Emma quickly put the bowl down and stood up, her eyes red and swollen from lack of sleep. "Sarah, you came to visit my mom," Emma mumbled, her voice choking up. Eleanor, lying on the bed, opened her eyes wide upon hearing my name. Her old, cloudy eyes were filled with panic, fear, mixed with absolute remorse. Her frail left hand trembled, clawing at the white bedsheets, her mouth twisting as she tried to stammer out words. Sarah. Sorry. Spare, Kevin." I stepped closer to the bed, maintaining a calm and distant expression. I opened my purse, pulled out a document folder, and placed it gently on the metal nightstand. "This is the release for the lien on your house in Peoria." I looked straight into Eleanor's eyes, speaking clearly and distinctly so she could hear every word. "I used my personal money to go to the bank and pay off the $60,000 high-interest loan Kevin took out, retrieving the deed for you, just as we agreed the other day. Kevin also signed the divorce papers and will be released on bail this week thanks to my waiver. I kept my promise. Nobody owes anybody anything anymore." Hearing this, Emma covered her face and sobbed bitterly. She ran over, hugged my arm, and buried her head in my shoulder, crying. "Sarah, thank you. My parents wronged you, and Kevin was such a scumbag, yet you still saved our home. I bow to you on behalf of my whole family. My family owes you our lives." I gently pulled Emma's hands away and patted her shoulder. "You don't need to bow. I am a business person with principles. I am fair, and I keep debts clear. You are a sensible girl. Try to live well and take care of your parents. From today on, I and your family are officially strangers." I bowed my head to say a final goodbye to Eleanor. In the rheumy eyes of that once incredibly bitter woman, tears welled up and rolled down her worn wrinkles. She reached up her healthy arm as if wanting to hold on to me, as if wanting to say another word of apology. But I turned my back and walked away decisively. Stepping out of the hospital gates, I took a deep breath. The afternoon sky in Chicago was a deep blue, with a few faint rays of winter sun filtering through the bare trees. The sound of honking cars on the busy street somehow sounded pleasant. My chest felt incredibly light, as if every burden had been completely lifted. A dark chapter full of lies and betrayal was officially closed. From this moment on, Sarah was a completely free woman. On a late afternoon in mid-December, the winter wind blew in from Lake Michigan, bringing a biting chill. The local coffee shop sat tucked under an old leafless oak tree. 3 years ago, this was the place where Kevin, wearing a crisp white shirt, shyly held my hand on our first date. Now, it served as the witness to the end of a deceitful marriage. Kevin arrived 10 minutes earlier than me. He sat huddled on a faded metal chair, his grimy hands rubbing a hot cup of black coffee to salvage some warmth. Looking at him now, nobody would recognize the shadow of the slick, arrogant CEO from before. Kevin wore a worn-out windbreaker, the shoulders frayed and threads coming undone. His beard was patchy, covering a haggard, pale face. His eyes were dull and empty, staring out at the choppy, murky waters of the lake. I walked over, pulled out the chair opposite him, and sat down. The barista brought out a steaming pot of herbal tea. I nodded in thanks, not saying a word. Kevin looked up at me, his gaze dropping, carrying a weak and utterly pathetic plea. He opened his mouth, his voice hoarse as if something was stuck in his throat. "Sarah, you came. Thank you for agreeing to meet me." I leisurely poured the tea into a cup. The steam rose, carrying a mild fragrance that chased away the damp smell of the lake. I pushed the cup toward him, my voice flat. If you have something to say it fast. I only have 15 minutes before I have to head back to the supermarket to check the evening shift. Kevin raised his trembling hands to pick up the teacup. But before he could drink, he quickly put it down because it was burning hot. He kept his face down, his hands clasped tightly, resting on his knees, rubbing them until they turned red. I was released on bail 2 days ago, Kevin stammered, every word heavy as a rock. Thank you for submitting the waiver. But Sarah, I walked out of the detention center empty-handed. No house, no company, not a penny to my name, and my IDs are held by the authorities. I had to rent a dilapidated, leaky motel room deep in an alley on the south side. At night, rats run wild across the roof. My parents are bedridden back home. I don't dare show my face to my old friends and business partners. Whenever they see my number, they block it. I tried to apply for a security guard job, but they saw my background and kicked me out. Sarah, I am living a fate worse than death. I took a sip of tea. The bitterness lingered on the tip of my tongue, but the aftertaste was sweet and smooth. I looked straight at Kevin without blinking, not feeling the slightest ounce of pity. Did you ask me out here just to whine about your poverty and your pathetic state, Kevin? You should have gone to find your little sister to cry to. Oh, wait. She cleaned out your meager savings and ran away with the child of the gym trainer, didn't she? Kevin jumped as if his tail had been stepped on. He snapped his head up, his eye sockets, bloodshot, cloudy tears welling up and rolling down his darkened cheeks. He gritted his teeth, his voice choked with resentment. Don't mention that wretched woman anymore. It is her fault. She used sweet words to seduce me. I was tricked. I lost my mind, Sarah. But you didn't have to be so utterly ruthless as to strip me of absolutely everything like that. The condo, the company, the money. After all, we were husband and wife. You forced me to a dead end, making me carry a mountain of debt while walking away empty-handed. Are you gloating right now? Hearing those cowardly, blame-shifting words, I chuckled softly, a bitter but incredibly clear-sighted laugh. Even at this very moment, having hit rock bottom, this man still refused to acknowledge his own rottenness. I slammed my teacup onto the table. The sharp clack made Kevin flinch and pull his shoulders in. I leaned forward, my eyes pinning down his evasive pupils, grinding out every word sharp as a razor. Kevin, open your eyes wide and look clearly. You did not lose because I was ruthless. You lost because of your arrogance, your bottomless greed, and because you dared to look down on your wife. Kevin froze, his chapped lips trembling as he tried to argue, but he went mute under my overbearing aura. Did you think I was just some clueless housewife, easily fooled by your cheap little sister label? I continued, my tone commanding and articulate. I built my career from scratch, managing a distribution network worth millions, hustling in the corporate world for years. Your petty embezzlement tricks, I saw right through them with one glance. Kevin lowered his head, breathing heavily. My words struck directly at the fake pride he used to puff his chest out about. You keep saying Chloe tricked you. No. Nobody could trick you if you didn't have greed and a macho complex in your blood. I showed no mercy, continuing to strip away his facade. You married me, saw that I made more money and was more decisive than you, and you developed an inferiority complex. You went to Chloe not necessarily because she was beautiful, but because around her, you got to throw money around, act superior, and have her flatter you, scratching exactly at your cheap ego. You lusted after her young body, lusted after the feeling of being a king. You stole company funds, even secretly took out a second mortgage on your own parents' house, just to satisfy that fake pride. You dug your own grave. Do not blame women. Kevin choked on his words. He brought a hand to clutch his chest, exhaling in agonizing gasps. I gave you chances. I lowered my voice, carrying a bit of the sorrowful sigh of someone who once gave her all to her family. Many times I dropped hints to remind you about the company finances, about your shady relationships, but you chose to ignore them. On our wedding night, when you grabbed your suitcase and walked out the door of our house to fly to Cabo, you turned back and gave me a contemptuous smirk. Did you think about me then? When you left your elderly parents to face the bank's debt collectors, did you think about being a good son? Kevin's tears fell heavily onto the plastic table. He brought both hands up to cover his face, his sobs breaking out into miserable, shattered groans. I was wrong. I was truly wrong, Sarah. If only I had not walked out that door that night. Do not say if only and don't cry. The belated tears of a traitor are extremely cheap. I stood up straight, reaching out to smooth a crease on my wool coat. I opened my wallet, pulled out a crisp $20 bill, and placed it gently on the table, sliding it under the teapot. The drinks are on me today. Consider it our final farewell dinner, cutting all ties. Karma does not spare anyone. It often arrives late, but its accuracy is absolute, Kevin. You stumbled, so pick yourself up. For the rest of your life, learn how to be a decent human being before trying to be a CEO. Saying that, I decisively turned on my heel and walked away, never looking back once. A sudden gust of wind blew past, scattering dry oak leaves onto the rippling surface of the lake. Behind my back, in the deserted coffee shop, a man who once stood at the peak of arrogance was now slumping his head on the plastic table, sobbing in utter remorse and despair. The agonizing, gut-wrenching cries were swept away by the cold wind, vanishing into nothingness. I got into my car, put the key in, and started the engine. The Chicago sky began to light up brilliantly with city lights, casting warm golden streaks onto the asphalt. My life, from this moment on, would forever be devoid of the shadow of deceit and betrayal. There is no forgiveness, only settling scores fairly. 8 months flew by since that cold winter afternoon at the coffee shop by the lake. My life had turned a completely new page, busy with my organic grocery chain on track to open 3 more locations. I thought the name Kevin and the people involved had been permanently buried in the past. Until a sunny Tuesday morning in late summer, as I was reviewing revenue reports, the phone on my desk vibrated. It was Michael, my lawyer. Hey Michael, what's up, calling this early? Do not tell me there is a paperwork issue with the new branches, I answered cheerfully, my hand still scrolling the mouse to check data. On the other end, Michael's booming voice mingled with the sound of rustling papers. No, your branch paperwork is all set. I am calling to give you some off-topic news. The court just handed down the sentence for the warehouse asset liquidation case this morning. I raised an eyebrow, my typing hand pausing. Ah, Chad. Chloe's brother, right? What was the result? 4 years in federal prison for conspiracy and corporate fraud. Michael clicked his tongue. The punk cried like a baby in court, screaming that his sister's boyfriend tricked him. Have you heard any news about his precious sister? That little sister, Chloe. She took Kevin's money and ran off to Las Vegas with her gym trainer. They vanished without a trace, who knows, I said mildly, lifting my glass of water for a sip. Well, karma does not skip anyone. Michael's voice was full of schadenfreude. This morning I ran into the private investigator you hired before. He told me the story. She took the 60 grand and the Hublot watch to hide in Vegas with Tyler. She thought she found a launch pad to a better life. Who knew Tyler was a notorious gambler? He conned her into pawning all her designer goods, burned it all at the casino tables in less than 2 months, and then fled, leaving her with a massive debt. The shock caused her to miscarry. Now she is working as a dishwasher at a cheap diner off the strip from morning till night to pay off loan sharks. Word is, thugs came to collect and beat her half to death. She is living like a rat, worse than scum. I listened in silence. No surprise or gloating, just a sense of weariness for the foolishness of human nature. You sow seeds of deceit, you reap bitter fruits. Got it, thanks, Michael. The sentence is passed, so everything is completely closed. Hanging up, I sighed softly. Chad goes to prison. Chloe lives a dark, tormented life. What about Kevin, the man who personally kicked over his family's dinner table to chase after spoiled scraps? Where is he now? The answer came to me that afternoon when Emma, Kevin's sister, timidly knocked on my office door. After the family crisis, Emma quit her old job. Seeing that she was sharp, reasonable, and knew right from wrong, I agreed to hire her as an HR administrator for my company. She worked incredibly hard, always maintained professional boundaries, and never dared to bring up past events to bother me. But today, Emma's eyes were red and swollen, her cheeks visibly hollow. Sarah, I am sorry for bringing personal matters to the office, but I am at a dead end, and I do not know who else to talk to. Emma kept her head down, wringing her hands nervously. I took my eyes off the computer screen and pointed to the sofa. Sit down. What is going on? Calm down and tell me. Emma sat on the edge of the seat, tears beginning to fall. Sarah, this noon, I just had to check Kevin into the state psychiatric hospital. I paused slightly. Even though I anticipated Kevin would have a hard time recovering from the shock of leaving empty-handed with massive debt, putting him in a mental hospital was truly beyond my expectations. What happened to Kevin? I asked, keeping my voice as calm as possible. Ever since he got out of jail, he rented that leaky motel room on the south side. The loan sharks tracked him down, harassed him, vandalized his place, and beat him up. He panicked completely, Emma sobbed. Combined with the shock of losing the company, losing his wife, and the humiliation of being cheated on and robbed by Chloe, he couldn't handle the pressure. He developed delusions. Every day he wanders out to the dumpsters, picking up plastic bottles and torn plastic bags to bring back to his room. When people ask, he says they are designer bags for his mistress, or million-dollar corporate contracts. Some days, neighbors see him standing in the middle of the street, pointing at the sky, cursing Chloe and the gym trainer, and then kneeling to beg for your forgiveness. Emma covered her face, crying hysterically. My parents at home heard the news, and my mom got so shocked she had a second stroke. Now she is completely paralyzed and cannot even mumble. I cannot carry his burden anymore, Sarah. I had to send him to the psychiatric ward so they can manage him. The karma falling on my family is just too heavy. Looking at Emma's shaking shoulders, I could only stay silent. A suffocating stillness enveloped the office. The next morning was Sunday. I drove myself down to the state psychiatric hospital. I did not bring fruits or gifts. I just stood outside the iron fence of the men's ward, looking into the shaded common courtyard. Kevin was there. He wore a baggy, striped patient uniform, covered in dirt and dust. His once styled hair was shaved unevenly. His face was gaunt and haggard, lacking any vitality of a normal human being. He was sitting on the ground under an old oak tree, clutching a pile of dry fallen leaves. A few other patients walked by, teasing him and snatching his leaves. Kevin rolled his eyes wildly, hiding the leaves behind his back, muttering, "My money. The $3,000 Chanel bag I bought Chloe. My $1 million contracts. Do not try to steal them. I am the CEO. I am the CEO." Saying that, he looked up at the sky and let out a savage, maniacal laugh, then buried his head in his knees and wailed like a child getting spanked. His shoulders shook violently in the blinding sunlight. I stood just an iron fence and a courtyard away from him, but it felt like two completely separate worlds. He did not see me, or perhaps even if he did, he had no sanity left to recognize the wife he once callously abandoned on their wedding night. His eyes were cloudy, dark, and soulless, just like the tangled mess of lies he had woven himself. I did not step inside. I quietly turned my back and walked toward the parking lot. The autumn wind gently blew my shoulder-length hair. I looked up at the deep blue Chicago sky, my chest feeling incredibly light, my heart without the slightest ripple of hatred or pity. Everything had played out fairly and coldly. God does not take everything from anyone, nor does he cover up the crimes of any sinner. Kevin's descent into madness, Chad's prison sentence, and Chloe's humiliating life at the bottom of society were the most expensive prices to pay for treachery and bottomless greed. The verdict of conscience and the cycle of karma truly spare no one. A year passed in the blink of an eye since that autumn morning I stood outside the iron fence of the mental hospital. Time is indeed the greatest cleansing remedy. It washes away the garbage of the past and plants the seeds for brighter new beginnings. After thoroughly resolving the mess of lies, I officially withdrew my capital from the appliance distribution company tainted by my ex-husband. Using my years of business experience, I stepped out on my own to establish a company supplying organic grocery chains under my own brand. On a Friday morning, the early summer sunlight poured through my CEO office windows. I was flipping through a supply contract for an upcoming holiday when there was a tentative knock on the door. "Come in," I called out. Emma walked in carrying a neatly bound folder. In stark contrast to the skinny 25-year-old girl whose eyes were always red and swollen from crying over family drama a year ago, today's Emma wore an elegant beige business suit. Her hair was in a neat updo, and her demeanor was incredibly confident and professional. "Sarah, I brought over the Q2 revenue report for the 3 Westside branches for your approval. Sales targets and inventory shrinkage have all been controlled under 2%, exactly as you planned at the beginning of the month," Emma reported clearly, placing the folder on the desk. I picked up my pen, quickly scanning the data presented logically and clearly. The corners of my lips curved into a satisfied smile. I looked up at Emma and closed the folder. "You did great. Compared to when you first started, timid and making mistakes everywhere, you have truly earned your wings." I pushed the folder back to Emma, smiling. "Next month, the company is opening 2 new branches in the Loop. I have decided to promote you to regional director. Human Resources will send down the official appointment letter this afternoon." Emma froze. The hands holding the folder trembled slightly. Her eyes grew wet, not from pain like before, but tears of ultimate emotion and gratitude. "Sarah, I do not know what to say. I really did it." Emma bit her lip, her voice choking up. "My family treated you so badly before, and Kevin caused so many sins that ruined your life. Yet you not only did not push my family to a dead end, but you took me in, taught me step by step so I could have today." I reached up and gently cut her off. "I told you, Emma, I am a business person with clear debts and favors. Your brother sowed the wind, so he reaped the whirlwind, paying with the rest of his crazy life in an asylum. As for you, you are a decent person who knows right from wrong, working hard and contributing to the company with your own abilities. The regional director position was earned by your own sweat and tears. I do not hand out charity to anyone who doesn't deserve it. I stood up and patted Emma's shoulder. Being a manager, you must absolutely keep a cool head and a clean heart. Be clear with money, be decisive in love. Never follow in your brother's greedy footsteps, remember? Yes, I will engrave your words in my heart. Emma wiped a tear, smiled brightly, bowed, and asked to be excused back to work. Watching Emma's steady back as she walked out the door, I sighed in relief. I took Emma in not to prove I was noble, but because I regretted seeing a good seedling wither in that rotten family. Saving one person, helping them step into the light, is also a way to heal oneself. Late that afternoon, I left work early. I drove away from the loud, traffic-jammed city center to return to my new sanctuary. The empty 4-story townhouse in the city, filled with the deceitful memories of that wedding night, had been leased out long-term to a language center. With my savings and business profits, I bought a charming little house with a garden nestled peacefully in the spacious suburbs. As soon as I parked in the garage, I smelled the faint fragrance of the magnolia blooming in the corner of the yard. I changed into light loungewear, grabbed a watering can, and took a stroll around the garden. Along the white-painted wooden fence, bright sunflowers were blooming, proudly reaching their yellow petals to catch the last rays of the evening sun. I pulled a wicker chair onto the porch and brewed myself a familiar pot of herbal tea. There were no hidden phone calls, no shady credit card bills, and no fake, contemptuous stares from a treacherous man. The only sounds now were the chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves rubbing against each other in the crisp evening breeze. Taking a sip of hot tea, the slight bitterness dissolved on the tip of my tongue, leaving an incredibly smooth and sweet aftertaste. I closed my eyes, leaned back in the wicker chair, and felt the peace seeping into every corner of my soul. Ladies, having gone through a terrifying storm and tasting enough of the bitter flavor of betrayal, I finally understood a very simple truth. We women are all born with an instinct to sacrifice and build for our families. We are willing to step back, tighten our belts, and pour out our youth, sweat, and tears to serve as a launchpad for the man we call our husband. But that sacrifice only has value when it is placed in the right spot, given to the right person who knows how to cherish it. A woman can be forgiving. She can tolerate the petty flaws of married life. But absolutely, 100,000 times absolutely, we must never close our eyes and ignore deceit and betrayal. Loyalty is a mirror. Once it is shattered by someone else, no matter how hard you try to pick up the pieces and patch it together, all you will get in the end is a distorted reflection and battered, bleeding hands. A man is not the only sky that we must panic when it collapses. Do not be afraid to grab a broom and sweep the rotten garbage out of your life. Once the trash is thrown away, the house will naturally be bright and clear, just like those sunflowers out there. No matter if the storm knocks you down yesterday, no matter how cold the dark night is, as long as you keep your roots strong, when you wake up tomorrow morning, you will still stretch out proudly, fully facing the sun to brilliantly welcome the dawn. Life is long, and we are capable. Why cry over those who are not worth it? The tea is finished. The sunset is gradually falling on the horizon, painting a warm, fiery red. The dark days are closed. My life from this moment on will forever be a series of leisurely, free, and brilliantly sunny days. That concludes today's story. Thank you everyone for listening. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video to spread these meaningful stories. Goodbye and see you all in the next stories.